Welcome to the Natural Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing your health potential so that you can look and feel your best at any age. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach. And this is episode number 137. Well, I'm going to be changing things up a little bit. In the future, I'm going to be doing more solo episodes. This is a solo episode, and I'm going to be adding another feature here to the solo episodes, and it's going to be the Ask Me Anything episodes. And I created a webpage. It's at davidsandstrom.com/AMA, and that stands for Ask Me Anything. And you can click the button there, and you can leave me a 90-second voice message, and I'll do my best to use your question on an episode. I might do what I'm doing here with Jeff's question, and that is devote a whole episode to your question, or I might just take several questions and create an episode from those. So I encourage you to do that. Go to davidsandstrom.com/AMA, leave me a message, and you might just find yourself on the show. So Jeff's question is about what he should be eating for heart health. Let's listen to what Jeff has to say.
Hey, David. My name is Jeff. I really enjoy your podcast. Wanted to reach out to you. I have a question on nutrition. Haven't heard you talk about nutrition in a while. So I wanted to bounce this off you. I had open heart surgery a few years ago. And of course, I had high cholesterol. So I've heard that being a vegetarian, which made sense to me since there's no cholesterol in vegetables, was the way to go. However, I'm hearing some other advice that that's not necessarily true. So I wanted to reach out thinking that you're an expert on this kind of thing. So I was hoping you could give me some advice. I've heard about the carnivore diet and other things too. So what would be a man that's now in his early 60s looking to change his diet for health, especially to limit the clogging of my arteries? So look forward to hearing from you. And again, I really enjoy your podcast. Keep it up. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, for that question. That's a great question. And I'm sure a lot of people have something similar. And that's basically is, what should we eat? You know, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. You're right, Jeff, to point that out. And it's a simple question, but it has a rather complicated answer. So I'm going to do my best to answer that, kind of distill the information down in this episode. But I'm thinking it's probably going to have to be at least a two-part episode to answer this question adequately. So I do want to say this as far as heart health goes. I don't give medical advice. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. And none of the information that I share in this show is intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. I don't do that. That's the realm of an MD or a DO. If you need to manage your disease, you're working with something that's challenging, you might want to get with an MD or a DO. That's their specialty. They're trained in allopathic medicine, and I'm not. I specialize in building health. You know, I was listening to a podcast the other day and was a mental health expert on as a guest, and he pointed out that he went to a mental health conference, 3-day conference, and he heard speaker after speaker talking about mental illness, but not a word was mentioned about mental health. And he shares my same passion for helping people to build health, not necessarily manage their diseases. Time and a place for allopathic medicine, emergencies, acute conditions, drugs and surgery are great. But when it comes to chronic health challenges, natural methods are definitely superior. It's the way to go. So the allopathic practitioner wants to treat the illness that has the person. The natural health practitioner wants to treat the person that has the illness. And there's very much a big difference there. And that's what I do. I am a naturopathic doctor. The term doctor in my credential is the Latin word docere, and that stands for teacher. So a naturopathic doctor is a teacher of natural health. That's what I am. You know, in a lot of ways, a healthy diet is a healthy diet. In other words, a heart health diet is the same as a brain health diet, is the same as an immune system health diet, is the same as a digestive health diet, or athletic performance even. Now, if we're doing athletic performance, we might want to throw in a few more carbs, but the strategy is the same. Give our body less of what they don't want and more of what they need. And if we supply the right nutrients, our bodies know what to do with those nutrients. Remember, our bodies have built-in intelligence. They have a God-given built-in intelligence It knows what to do with the raw materials that we give it. So I'm calling this episode Plant-Based Diet versus Animal-Based Diet, which is better? So there's a lot of debate out there. And Jeff, I think you're on the right track thinking about nutrition when it comes to heart health. It has a lot to do with it. There's, of course, other things that will help with heart health as well. Exercise, stress reduction, emotional fitness, reducing toxic load, reducing toxins around the home, environmental toxins. There's a lot of ways we can promote heart health. But your question was specifically about diet, Jeff, and I want to answer that. So I did a search on Amazon, and I searched for diet books. And Amazon gave me over 50,000 results. So there's a lot of advice on what we should eat out there. But who do we listen to? How do we cut through the noise, so to speak? And that's what I want to help you do with this episode. So we see people who are thriving on various kinds of diets, all kinds of different diets. People are thriving on them. And those are the people that we see on the people's web pages, their testimonial sections, and we hear somebody say something like, I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. And by the way, my wife is happy with the new me too. You know what I mean? And we say, all right, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to buy the book or I'm going to buy the program. And we implement. And then, our results are pretty disappointing. We forgot to read the fine print that said actual mileage may vary, right? That applies here. So not all diets work for all people. So why is that? I start out most shows by letting you know what my credentials are, and one of them is naturopathic doctor, but you may not know that I'm also a certified nutritional counselor. So this is really right up my alley, is to answer a question like this. Well, part of the explanation why some diets work for some people and not for others is a concept called metabolic individuality. And the Roman philosopher Lucretius, who lived in the 1st century BC, said, one man's food is another man's poison. And I really believe he was onto something, because my experience as a nutritional counselor, and when I had my practice, I saw this time and time again, that the same food could have a beneficial effect on one person, have no effect on a second person, and have a detrimental effect on a third. So we respond differently as individuals to different foods. And the reason for that is we're all similar. We have all the same organs and systems. We have the same plumbing inside, right? But how our organs and systems work and how we're wired is an individual thing. That's variable. I want to share a quick story. We're going to be talking about plant-based versus animal-based here. When I was first studying nutrition about 25 years ago, we were living down in West Palm Beach, and there was an institute nearby called the Hippocrates Health Institute. And they are raw food vegans. And people would check into the institute, spend a few weeks there, and really transform their health a lot of the times. So you could go there and just have lunch. So my wife, Michelle, and I would often go there just for lunch. And they would put out this massive spread with beautiful colors, and they'd have fermented vegetables, kimchi. It was an amazing spread, and we used to enjoy eating there. And that's when I first started thinking, well, maybe there is something to this vegetarian vegan stuff. So I didn't go pure vegan like they would advocate, the Hippocrates Health Institute would, but I did go mostly vegetarian for a year. And I ate occasional white meat chicken, occasional piece of fish, and eggs, but my diet was mostly plant-based. And I didn't do well that year. I had a lot of colds. My energy production was down. My mood wasn't what it should be. And I was just lacking. Something was missing, but I believed that I was eating the healthiest diet possible. Well, one day I was really hungry, and I was driving right past a Wendy's. So I pulled into the drive-thru. I ordered a double cheeseburger, and I ate that thing. And I got finished eating that burger, and 5 minutes later, boom, my energy picked up, my mental clarity returned, my mood improved, and I was like, wow, my body needs red meat. Whatever the nutrients are in red meat, my body thrives on it. And from that point on, I've been eating red meat ever since. I share that story because I believe I'm in the same boat as a lot of people. There's a lot more former vegetarians than there are vegetarians, because most of the time when someone's eating 100% plant-based, it's not because they feel best on that diet. It's not because The scientific research compels them to eat that way, although a case can be made, right? We'll be talking about that later. It's because of animal rights. That's usually what it boils down to. People have a moral or an ethical view that they hold, that they don't want to kill an animal in order to eat it. And that's okay. You're allowed to have that position. I don't. I believe God gave us dominion over this world, gave us dominion over the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and all the earth, actually. And we are to exercise that dominion and exercise the free will choices that we have. So I don't share the animal rights view, but I respect somebody that has that view. So getting back to metabolic individuality. So there's two main areas of concern when it comes to how our bodies work. One is the glucose response after we eat, how much our blood sugar rises after a meal. And we can work on that. We can adjust that by adjusting our macronutrient ratios. The macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fat. If our blood sugar is rising too much, we might need to make some adjustments to those macros. And another is food sensitivities. Everyone has them. It's an allergic reaction is when you're going to have an automatic and fast reaction to a food that's detrimental. You might have hives, or you could even have anaphylactic, where your trachea would close up and stop breathing, be potentially fatal. A food sensitivity is an immunoglobulin reaction like an allergy, but it's not as severe and it has more of a delayed reaction. So our bodies can release pro-inflammatory cytokines when we eat a food that we're sensitive to. So the way to address that is through a test called mediator release technique. I'm going to be doing a whole episode on that down the road, but it's a lab test. You send your blood in, and they'll test your blood for a number of different foods, a couple of hundred foods really if you want to, and you'll know what foods you should avoid. It's a pretty good system, a little on the expensive side, but in the future I'm going to be doing an episode on that, and I hope to get the administrator of Oxford Biomedical Laboratories that runs MRT on the show. We talked about having him on the podcast, and he agreed to do that, but I just don't know when just yet. But anyway, I'm going to be creating an online course that goes over all that, all the fine details with that. It's going to be available online in the near future. It's going to be a fairly comprehensive course on nutrition, and you'll really know how to dial in your diet there. But in the meantime, let's talk about what we're supposed to eat for heart health. Getting back to Jeff's question. Now, the 35,000-foot view as to what I'm advocating is I do not advocate a plant-based vegan diet. I already told you that. Nor do I advocate an animal-based or carnivore diet. Now, can you experience short-term health benefits to going to either one of those extremes? Yes, you can. There are short-term benefits with either one of those. Are there long-term health challenges with eating that way? Yeah, you bet there are. The carnivore or the low-carb diet or the keto type diet forces your body to abandon its preferred source for energy, which is glucose, or we get from carbohydrates, into burning fat for fuel. And when we do, we produce ketones. Now, that's the body's emergency backup system to produce energy. Should we be doing that once in a while? Yes, because it can be considered a hermetic stress or a beneficial stress on the body, kind of like a fast or kind of like exercise. It's good to cycle in and out of fat burning and carb burning, but we don't want to stay in either one of those. We want to cycle back and forth. And over the long term, on a low-carb diet, we set ourselves up for a lot of issues. Number one, a low energy production. Number two, some cognitive issues with some brain fog. People on low-carb diets long-term will experience thyroid issues. The thyroid hormones will get out of whack. You can experience hair loss. Your reproductive hormones will get out of balance as well. And men will experience low testosterone. Women will have imbalances in their progesterone and their estrogen. Some women could even experience amenorrhea, which means they'll lose their menstrual period when they're on a long-term low-carb diet. It's not good over the long haul. Short-term benefits, yeah, but not good over the long haul. Now, both of those extremes, plant-based only, vegan, or carnivore, 0 to low carb, you're in a semi-fasted state. So we want to be in a fasted state once in a while. It is beneficial. It's hermetic stress, but we want to cycle in and out of that. So what should we be eating long term? it should be something in between those two. But I believe we should be leaning towards an animal-based diet or a paleo-type diet, which I believe is more in line with our ancestral heritage, and it's closer to God's natural design, which we'll be talking about here in a minute. But we can't just go straight paleo. We need to account for food sensitivities. We need to account for metabolic individuality. And paleo doesn't allow dairy. And if you don't have a food sensitivity to dairy, I would recommend consuming it because there's a lot of nutrients packed in there. Dairy is very nutrient dense. So metabolic individuality explains why a certain segment of the population can improve their health on very, very different styles of eating or diets, right? But there's also another reason. Both those ways of eating are getting away from processed foods. They would advocate, in fact, most nutrition experts will advocate moving away from processed foods. The more man gets his hands on our food supply, the worse it is for us. And when you get away from processed food and you start eating non-processed foods, whether they be plant-based or animal-based, you're automatically going to be moving away from vegetable oils. Now, this is another topic that I'm going to be doing a whole episode on because there's a lot to be said here. But I just want to say a couple things right now. And one is, there is no such thing as a vegetable oil. Oils like soybean oil, canola oil, which is actually rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, cottonseed oil, those are all seed oils. There's no such thing as a vegetable oil. And seed oils are highly perishable. They get spoiled even during the extraction process, let alone the heating and the cleansing that they do and the different chemicals to make it clear and deodorize. And then they put them in clear bottles on the grocery shelf that exposes them to light, and light also spoils those oils. So those oils become very, very toxic when they're spoiled or oxidized. And it's one of the worst things you can eat. In fact, if you go to a restaurant and you're eating a fried food, it's almost certainly cooked in canola oil or soybean oil. And when you heat those fried oils up over and over again, they become extraordinarily toxic. It's one of the worst things you can eat. So we're going to be dedicating a whole episode to seed oils. And I'll get into some of the specifics there. It's going to blow you away. It's really a huge, huge thing that not a lot of people are talking about, but more and more people are starting to see the light. So Jeff, you are correct to say that there's no cholesterol in plant-based foods. That's true. But lowering our dietary cholesterol has very little impact on our total cholesterol. You see, because cholesterol is so important, it's such an important nutrient that God didn't take it for granted that we get enough in our diets. God saw to it that our bodies produce endogenously, inside of our own bodies, we produce the cholesterol that we need. It's made in the liver, and it's also made in the brain. A lot of people don't know this, but 25% of the total cholesterol in your body is in your brain. Cholesterol is used in the brain for cognitive function. It's also used to make nervous system tissue. So it's a pretty important component of a healthy person. Cholesterol is also a cellular repair protein. If you were in a motorcycle accident and you got a road rash, you would see your cholesterol rise because since it's a cellular repair protein, the body would automatically dispatch cholesterol to help repair the damaged skin tissue. So it's super, super important. Another thing cholesterol does is it's involved in the assimilation of all the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, which we're going to be talking about here in a minute. Another thing cholesterol does is it's foundational for the production of our reproductive hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. Without adequate cholesterol, you will experience imbalances in those very, very crucial hormones. So cholesterol is not the enemy that we've been led to believe. Without cholesterol, we'd be in big trouble. In fact, we'd die really fast. So it's dangerous to get your cholesterol too low. Now, Jeff actually had a second question. Jeff, I know your second question is on cholesterol and whether or not we should be lowering it with statins artificially. Again, that's a topic worth spending a whole episode on. I just can't get into all those details in a single episode. It'd just be too long. But we'll tackle that one in a future episode. So in this episode, I intend to make the case that a diet that leans towards animal-based foods is healthier than a diet that leans towards plant-based foods. Now you might be saying, hang on a minute, Dave. Haven't you read the China study? Colin Campbell makes a powerful argument that eating a whole food, plant-based diet is the way to go. And yes, I have read the China study, and he does make a convincing argument. But I disagree with many of Campbell's conclusions. In fact, a lot of his conclusions have got holes so big you can drive a Mack truck through them. And I want to discuss some of that, but again, it's going to be way too much for a single episode. Look for another whole episode dedicated to the China study. I also want to address Dan Buettner's Blue Zones book as well. I have a lot to say on both those books. We're going to dedicate a whole episode to both of those in the future. Now, I want to give you some of the reasons why I make the recommendations that I do. If you're a regular listener to the show, you know that we maximize our health potential by aligning our lives more fully with God's natural design for spirit, mind, and body. So what has God designed into our bodies to tell us something about what we should be eating? Well, if we look at our anatomy and physiology, human beings are quite obviously designed to be omnivores. We're supposed to be consuming both plant-based foods and animal-based foods. For instance, humans have a mono-chamber stomach or a single-chamber stomach, one stomach, and our stomach environment is very acidic. And that acidic environment lends itself to digesting protein, meat. We also have a liver that produces bile, and that bile is stored in the gallbladder, and that assists us when consuming a high-fat meal like a T-bone steak. So we have the equipment to be consuming meat along with fat that comes with that, as well as the cholesterol. We have a relatively long small intestine and a relatively short large intestine. That stands in stark contrast to a ruminant animal who's a vegetarian that has a relatively short small intestine and a relatively long large intestine. The digestive process in a ruminant is much more intense and takes much longer than it does in humans. Now, a ruminant animal is a cow, a lamb, sheep, goat, bison, deer, elk. They're vegetarians, and they graze on grass, green stuff growing in the pasture. And they have multi-chamber stomachs, or 4 chambers to their stomachs, and food will move, what they consume moves from one chamber to the other, where it gets fermented. And a cow may even regurgitate some of that food back up into their mouth and chew it more thoroughly and send it back down for some more thorough digesting. So what a ruminant does during this long digestive process is there's a lot of fermentation that takes place. And through that fermentation, they convert their vegetarian diet that's full of unhealthy fats for human consumption, and they convert it into healthy fats that are very beneficial for human beings. So that speaks to the idea that we are designed to consume animal-based products because that fat gets lodged in their tissue. And when we eat meat and organs from a ruminant animal, we're getting a nutrient-dense, bioavailable nutrients that are just incredible for us. So a human being's digestive system is more like a lion or a tiger who's a natural carnivore than it is a ruminant like a cow. More evidence that we should be consuming meat is our teeth. The third, on your upper row of teeth, the third tooth from the center is that pointy tooth. It looks like a dog's canine tooth, right? Dentists even call that tooth the canine. And that is for ripping and shredding meat, animal flesh. So by design, we are supposed to be consuming animal-based products. But we also have pancreatic enzymes like amylase that helps us digest complex carbs found in vegetables. We also produce the enzyme lactase, which helps us to digest lactose, which is found in dairy. And we have another enzyme produced by the pancreas called sucrase, which helps us digest sucrose, which is found in simple carbs like fruit. So this all points to the idea that we are created to be omnivores. And an animal-based diet that leans more towards animal-based foods than it does plant-based foods has more bioavailable vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients. Now, cholesterol is one of the main constituents in the bile salts which help us break down and assimilate fat-soluble vitamins. The fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. Let's talk about each of these. Vitamin A, the bioavailable form of vitamin A, is retinol, and it's only found in animal-based foods. It's important for vision. It helps us produce mucous membranes, and By the way, producing a healthy mucous membrane is very important to health. Our whole digestive tract is lined with a mucosal barrier. And what it's designed to do is protect us from the outside world. Our digestive tract, the alimentary canal, even though it's inside the body, is part of the outside world. Because when we open our mouths and put food down there, sometimes we're ingesting microbes that might be harmful to us. So that mucosal barrier is what protects us from those harmful products that may be attached to the food that we eat. Now, just to illustrate this, we've all seen dogs drink water out of a dirty puddle and not get sick. Why is that? Because a dog has a super strong mucosal barrier. So we have a mucosal barrier too. It's not as strong as a dog's, but we should seek to be producing the healthiest mucosal barrier we can. It's very important for a well-functioning digestive system, and vitamin A helps us do that. And vitamin A, the bioavailable form, is only found in animal-based foods. Good sources of vitamin A are liver, butter, whole milk, and egg yolks. Plants do not contain the usable form of vitamin A, which is retinol. Plants do have a carotenoid called beta-carotene, which gives carrots and sweet potatoes their orange color. It's also found in green leafy vegetables. And the body can convert beta-carotene into vitamin A, but it's less efficient than actually consuming the animal-based pure form of retinol. So animal-based products are better at delivering vitamin A to the body. Now let's look at vitamin D. The active form of vitamin D is vitamin D3, and D3 promotes the absorption of calcium and phosphorus, which are super important for strong bones and teeth. It's also a really important immune system regulator. And the Cleveland Clinic estimates that 35% of adults in the U.S. are vitamin D deficient. And a deficiency is defined as less than 20 nanomoles per milliliter. Now remember this about the USRDA, the recommended daily allowance of vitamins and minerals. It's put together by doctors. What do doctors do? They manage disease. All right, so the RDA is the minimum required to keep you from getting a disease, not the amount that we should be consuming if we're striving for optimal health. So there's a big difference between the US RDA, which is a minimum, and the naturopathic optimum, which is generally going to be higher than the RDA. Symptoms of vitamin D deficiency include fatigue, muscle weakness, mood changes like depression, cognitive decline. There's a 2002 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that said that people that had less than 25 nanomoles per milliliter of D3 that was associated with an increased risk of dementia and stroke. I'll put a link to that study in the show notes if you want to read it. There are important heart health implications with vitamin D. The heart itself has vitamin D receptors. And there's also studies that suggest that vitamin D helps to keep our arteries flexible. And that's very important for maintaining a healthy blood pressure, which we all know is important for heart health. Vitamin D also helps us maintain our insulin sensitivity. And being sensitive to insulin is one of the hallmarks of a person who is metabolically healthy. Right? So when we consume sugar, our body will release insulin, and that helps. The primary purpose of insulin is to drive blood sugar into our cells, to get it out of the blood and into the cell. Doing that efficiently is a super, super important metabolic health process. So it's a great measure of how healthy somebody is measuring their insulin sensitivity. Vitamin D also helps to modulate the immune system. Now, when it comes to immune system function, we want to embrace the Goldilocks principle. We don't want too much, we don't want too little, we want to be just right. So an underactive immune system, we're going to get sick more often. We're going to be subject to all kinds of infections. An overactive immune system, we can develop allergies, or in the more severe cases, we develop autoimmune, where an overactive immune system is starting to attack healthy cells in our body. So we don't want either one of those extremes. We want to find that Goldilocks, middle of the road, well-functioning immune. And vitamin D helps to modulate the immune. If it's overactive, we'll bring it down. If it's underactive, it'll bring it up. It's a very important component of our immune system, is vitamin D, adequate levels. Without adequate levels of vitamin D, we're in big trouble. So this is an important point. The only plant-based food that has any significant amount of vitamin D are mushrooms. And even then, the vitamin D we find in mushrooms is D2, which is not the most bioavailable form. Can our bodies convert D2 into D3? Yep, probably. It can do that, but it's not as efficient as just getting D3 from our food. Now, the body can also produce vitamin D3 by converting sunlight acting on a cholesterol on our skin. There's a substance called 7-dehydrocholesterol that rests on the skin that will convert sunlight into vitamin D3. Now, we can wash that off in the shower. So the best time to get sunlight on your skin, if you're concerned about vitamin D, is to do it before you shower in the morning, because we have to have that cholesterol, which is a fatty substance, on the skin. In fact, it gets washed off with soap. All right, so there's problems with getting all your vitamin D from the sunlight only, and that is most of us are not walking around naked all day long to get sunlight all over our bodies. Maybe we don't even live in a climate where we're spending much time outside. People with darker skin pigmentation are less efficient at that conversion process. So the lighter your skin, the more efficient you are. The darker your skin, the less efficient you are, and the more time you'll have to spend in the sun in order to convert sunlight into vitamin D. Also, our ability to make that conversion reduces or diminishes with age. It's about 13% per decade. So that means that a 60-year-old would only be about 50% as efficient as a 20-year-old in converting sunlight into vitamin D. So you might be saying, well, what about fortified foods? We can get vitamin D that way. Well, that's true. They fortify some foods like cereals and nut milks with vitamin D, but that's D2. It's not D3. It's not the bioavailable form. So once again, we're better off getting our nutrients from whole food sources. What are good food sources of vitamin D3? Cod liver oil is very high in D3. Fatty fish like salmon, swordfish, tuna fish, sardines. Here we go again, butter, liver, egg yolks. And again, I just mentioned fortified cereals like that do have D2 and nut-based milks. But, understand there's no such thing as a nut-based milk. When they make that white substance they put in a carton in the grocery store that's made from soybeans or almond milk or something like that, they add water to those beans and it turns white, but it's not milk. Milk is produced by mammals, right? Last time I checked, there's no almond mammal, right? It's a plant-based source, right? And we're going to be talking a little bit about why we want to avoid nuts and seeds in an upcoming episode. So the next fat-soluble vitamin is vitamin E, and vitamin E is a really important antioxidant. Good sources of vitamin E, we can get vitamin E from vegetable, plant-based sources. We find vitamin E in almonds, hazelnuts, sunflower seeds, pine nuts, peanuts, avocados, and salmon. Another fat-soluble vitamin is vitamin K. And vitamin K is important for blood clotting, and some studies suggest that it inhibits the calcification of arteries. That's a pretty important function for our heart health. Vitamin K is found in fermented soybeans, or natto. We can find it in collard greens, spinach, kale, broccoli. Some animal-based sources of vitamin K are liver, meat, milk, and egg yolks. Remember, adequate cholesterol levels are necessary for the efficient absorption of all the fat-soluble vitamins. Again, I'm going to have more on cholesterol and what levels we should be looking for in the next episode. I'm going to address Jeff's second question there. Another important nutrient that'll be missing from a plant-based diet is vitamin B12 or cobalamin. There is no such thing as a plant-based source of B12, period. End of discussion. All right, B12 is a super important nutrient. Our bodies use B12 to form red blood cells and to make DNA. It's also a key player in the function and development of brain and nerve tissue. A B12 deficiency is defined as less than 200 picograms per milliliter. And most sources will tell you that if you have above 300 picograms per milliliter, that's adequate. But again, you're probably going to want a little bit more than that if you're looking for optimum. Deficiency symptoms of B12 are pretty numerous. Muscle weakness, numbness or tingling in the hands and feet, trouble walking, balance issues, nausea, decreased appetite, weight loss, irritability, mood issues, lack of energy or tiring easily, get fatigued easily, diarrhea, smooth or tender tongue, and a fast heart rate or tachycardia. Those are some serious health issues if you don't have B12. Once again, we're in big trouble if we are deficient in one of these animal-based only nutrients. You cannot get B12 from a plant-based source. So I believe that's also speaks to the evidence of our design. I don't think God designed our bodies to where we have to take a vitamin supplement in order to get the nutrients we need. So once again, if we don't have this essential nutrient, we're in big trouble. And you can only get B12 from animal-based sources. So you might be saying, well, if I'm plant-based, I can get B12 from a supplement. Well, I would suggest that God didn't design our bodies to require a supplement. We're supposed to be getting all the nutrients we require from our food. So good sources of B12 are fish, meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy products. If you're going to supplement with B12, make sure you get methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin. Methylcobalamin is the bioavailable form. The cyanocobalamin is a synthetic form of B12, not as bioavailable. And by the way, if you're looking for a source of quality supplements, do what I do. Go to FullScript. FullScript is a curator of dozens of high-quality, professional-grade brands that offer thousands of quality products. You can go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/FullScript, use my link there, sign up, create an account, and you'll lock in a 10% discount for life, and you'll have access to the highest quality supplements available anywhere. All right, so wrapping things up, in summary, extreme plant-based diets set us up for serious nutrient deficiencies, muscle weakness, cognitive issues, digestive issues, a lot of problems that we want to avoid. An extreme animal-based diet also sets us up for problems. Low energy, brain fog, thyroid issues, reproductive hormone imbalances. So I don't recommend either of those extremes. We should settle in on something in the middle there. But I believe we should be leaning towards animal-based. In the next episode, I'm going to be getting into some of the specifics as to exactly what I recommend that we should eat. But I'm not through trashing plants just yet. Nutrient deficiencies are not the end of the problem with vegetables. I'm not done yet. We've got to talk about plant toxins. So in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about plant defense chemicals and how they present problems for us. And I'm going to be giving you my specific recommendations as to what we should eat and what we should avoid. So thank you for listening. I appreciate you. I'll talk with you next time. Be blessed.